Denver, Colorado, March 4th, 1891, 10 in the morning. A man named Harlon Fitch, 53 years old, the chief land officer for the Colorado Division of the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad, signed a transfer document in his office on 16th Street that conveyed surface and mineral rights to 418 acres in Gunnison County to a private trust administered from a law office in Philadelphia. The trust had no name beyond its administrative designation in the deed. The Consolidated Western Mineral Trust, established under Pennsylvania law, represented by the firm of Caldwell and Morrow. The consideration listed on the deed was $1 and other valuable considerations. The land had been valued by the railroad's own geological survey at $62,000. The transfer took 11 minutes. Fitch signed the deed, witnessed by his clerk. The clerk notarized it. Fitch put the deed in an outgoing folder on his desk and went to his next appointment.
That transfer is the center of this story. Not the land, not the trust, not the deed. The 11 minutes. Because 11 minutes before Harlon Fitch signed that deed, he had received by messenger from the Denver and Rio Grande Western's operations office 2 blocks north on 16th Street, a field report from the mine superintendent at the railroad's Gunnison County extraction operation.
The report described a sealed chamber found at depth during lateral drift expansion at the number 4 working. It described what was in the chamber. The field report and the transfer deed share the same date. They share the same morning. A man read a report describing what was underground, and 11 minutes later he signed away the ground above it for $1. The land had been valued at $62,000. The transfer took 11 minutes. That is the document that matters. Everything else in this investigation is evidence for what was in that 11-minute gap. But here is what 7 federal institutions and 14 Delaware-registered limited liability companies have spent 135 years making sure you never calculate.
Colorado entered the Union in 1876 as a mining state. The decade that followed produced one of the most intensive periods of subsurface extraction in American history. Silver and gold from the San Juan and 10 Mile ranges, coal from the Raton and Yampa fields, lead and zinc from the districts around Leadville that had been producing since the late 1870s.
By 1890, Colorado had more active mine operations per square mile of mountain terrain than any other state in the Union, and the men who ran those operations, the railroad land offices, the mine superintendents, the geological survey crews, had more detailed knowledge of the subsurface geology of the Colorado Rockies than any institutional body in the country. They had drilled it, blasted it, hauled from it, and mapped it. They knew what was in the ground. Which is why what happened between 1891 and 1898 is not explicable by any account that takes the official record at face value. Between January 1891 and December 1898, 7 coal, silver, and copper mine operations in Colorado, all of them producing, all of them with active geological surveys projecting years of viable extraction, were closed, sealed, and transferred to private trusts or Delaware-incorporated holding companies within 18 months of a documented underground incident. Not geological failures, not market collapses, not labor actions that ended operations. The operations closed with ore still in the ground, equipment still in the shafts, and carrying costs that continued for years after extraction ceased. The companies that closed them absorbed those costs without explanation. 7 operations, 7 incidents, 7 closures, 7 transfers. The sequence is identical in each case. The financial logic is identical in each case. And the financial logic is irrational by any account that does not include what was found underground. The first is the Gunnison County transfer, Harlon Fitch's 11 minutes on March 4th, 1891. The field report that preceded the transfer deed is in the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad's Administrative Archive at the Colorado State Archives in Denver, Accession Series 41, Box 12. It describes a lateral drift expansion at the number 4 working that broke through a limestone partition at 240 feet below surface into a chamber of the following dimensions: 31 feet in length, 12 feet in width, 8 feet at ceiling height. It describes the contents of the chamber. It describes them in 6 lines of the field superintendent's functional prose: the number of figures, their arrangement, their approximate dimensions, the materials associated with them. The report was filed by the superintendent, a 38-year-old mining engineer named Arthur Covington, on March 1, 1891. It arrived at Fitch's desk on March 4th. By 10:11 that morning, the land above it belonged to the Consolidated Western Mineral Trust for $1. Arthur Covington filed no follow-up report. He left the employ of the Denver and Rio Grande Western in April 1891. He is listed in the 1891 Denver City Directory as a mining consultant, operating from a private address on Sherman Avenue. He is not listed in the 1892 directory. The 1900 census shows an Arthur Covington, age 47, occupation listed as farmer, in Montrose County, Colorado. He had been a mining engineer with advanced training from the Colorado School of Mines in Golden. He spent the last decade of his documented life as a farmer in Montrose County. He left no recorded account of why. The second closure is the Lake County silver operation known as the Alma Extension Mine, owned by the Continental Mining and Smelting Company, a Denver incorporated entity whose principal shareholders included 3 members of the Colorado State Legislature. The Alma Extension had been producing silver ore since 1883, and in 1889 had filed a geological survey with the Colorado Bureau of Mines, projecting 14 additional years of viable extraction at current working depth. In September 1891, 6 months after the Gunnison transfer, the Continental Mining and Smelting Company closed the Alma Extension, sealed the primary shaft with a poured concrete cap, and transferred its Lake County land holdings to a newly formed corporation registered in Delaware under the name Western Reclamation Associates.
The Colorado Bureau of Mines filed an inquiry with Continental in November 1891, asking for an explanation of the closure. Continental's response, dated December 1891, is in the Bureau of Mines archive at the Colorado State Archives. It cites unspecified geological conditions rendering further extraction impractical. The Bureau's own geological staff reviewed Continental's 1889 survey, the one projecting 14 more years of viable extraction, and noted in an internal memorandum that the 2 assessments were irreconcilable. The internal memorandum is in the same box as Continental's response. No further inquiry was made. What is not in the Bureau of Mines files is the incident report that the Alma Extension's mine foreman, a 51-year-old Cornish miner named William Treelor, filed with Continental's Denver office in July 1891. That report does not appear in Continental's surviving administrative papers, which are held at the Denver Public Library's Western History Collection.
It is referenced in a letter from Continental's general manager to the company's Philadelphia legal counsel dated August 1891, which asks the counsel to advise on the company's obligations regarding a discovery at the Alma Extension that the manager describes as requiring discretion beyond the normal operating framework. The letter exists. The incident report it references does not.
William Treelor left Continental's employ in October 1891 and moved to Nevada. His name does not appear in any Colorado record after that date. The third closure, the fourth, the fifth, each follows the same arithmetic. The Pitkin County copper operation known as the Crown Point Mine, owned by a consortium that included the Moffett banking family of Denver, closed in March 1893 following an incident report by the mine's geological surveyor, a 33-year-old man named Elias Porter, who documented a subsurface formation at 308 feet that he described in his survey notes, which survive in the Pitkin County recorder's files because they were attached to a property transfer filing, as of artificial construction, oriented, and containing physical remains inconsistent with any known burial practice in the region. Porter's survey notes are 4 paragraphs. The 4th paragraph ends mid-sentence. The rest of the page is blank.
The Crown Point closed 3 months later. Its Pitkin County surface rights transferred to a Colorado corporation that dissolved in 1897 after transferring its assets to a Delaware entity. The Delaware entity's registered agent in 1897 was the same Philadelphia law firm, Caldwell and Morrow, that had administered the Consolidated Western Mineral Trust, receiving the Gunnison County land in 1891. The same law firm. 2 operations in 2 counties, 2 years apart, 2 different corporate structures. The same Philadelphia address on the transfer documents. Caldwell and Morrow does not appear in any Philadelphia bar directory for the period 1890 through 1910. It does not appear in the Pennsylvania Corporate Registry. It appears on 7 Colorado property transfer documents between 1891 and 1898. 1 for each of the 7 mine closures in the sequence, and nowhere else in any public record. A law firm that represented 7 major Colorado land transfers over 7 years left no trace in the state where it was supposedly registered, no trace in any professional directory, and no trace in any public record outside the 7 deeds where its name appears as legal counsel for the receiving trust. What is mid-script now requires stating plainly. I have described 6 mine closures in Colorado between 1891 and 1898, Gunnison County, Lake County, Pitkin County, and 3 others not yet named. Each preceded by a documented underground incident, each resulting in a transfer to an entity connected to a law firm that does not otherwise exist in the public record. The full documented record, all 7 closures, all 7 transfers, all 7 incident reports and their subsequent disappearances, and the complete paper chain connecting each transfer to Caldwell and Morrow of Philadelphia is in the pinned comment below. Find it before we continue. The 4th closure is the Mesa County coal operation run by the Grand Valley Coal and Coke Company, closed in February 1894 after 11 years of productive extraction. The Grand Valley's mine superintendent filed an incident report in November 1893 describing a lateral breach at 190 feet that opened into a formation containing worked stone and metallic objects of unknown composition. The report is referenced in the company's board minutes for December 1893, a meeting at which the board voted unanimously to suspend all extraction operations and initiate surface right transfers. But the incident report itself is not attached to the minutes and is not in the company's surviving papers, which are held in a private collection in Grand Junction. The board minutes note that the superintendent's report was received and reviewed. They do not describe its contents. They do not name the superintendent.
The Grand Valley Coal and Coke Company transferred its Mesa County surface rights in March 1894 to the Western Reclamation Associates, the same Delaware entity that had received the Alma Extension's Lake County land in 1891. The 5th is the Hinsdale County silver operation known as the Ute Creek Mine, which had been in operation since 1879 and which the Colorado Bureau of Mines had assessed in 1892 as having the deepest viable silver seam in the state at that date. It closed in August 1895. No incident report has been located. What exists is a series of letters between the mine's owner, a Denver investor named George Standish, 58 years old, whose other mining investments continued operating through the decade, and an unnamed correspondent in Washington, D.C., whose letters to Standish have not survived, but whose existence is established by Standish's responses.
The Standish letters are in the Colorado Historical Society's manuscript collection, donated by Standish's granddaughter in 1951. They span the period March through June 1895. In them, Standish refers repeatedly to instructions received from the unnamed correspondent, instructions he describes as leaving him no practical alternative. He describes the financial loss. The Ute Creek's projected production over its remaining viable years represents a figure he cannot recoup from his other holdings, and he describes it as a cost he has accepted because the alternative is not available to him. He does not describe what the alternative is. He closes the Ute Creek in August 1895 and transfers the surface rights to Caldwell and Morrow of Philadelphia. He dies in 1901. His personal papers contain no other reference to the Ute Creek closure. The sixth closure is the Fremont County coal operation known as the Coal Creek Mine, closed in 1896. The seventh is the Ouray County silver and copper operation known as the Revenue Mine Extension, closed in 1898. In both cases, the sequence is identical: productive operation, geological survey projecting continued viability, documented incident at depth, closure within 18 months, transfer to a Delaware entity represented by Caldwell and Morrow. In both cases, the incident report is absent from the surviving company papers. In both cases, the mine superintendent left the company's employ within months of the closure. 7 operations. 7 incident reports that existed and then did not. 7 superintendents who left mining, the profession they had trained for and built careers in, within months of what they found underground. 7 transfers to entities connected to a law firm that is not in any professional directory of its era. The financial cost of those 7 closures, calculated from the Bureau of Mines' own geological surveys for each operation, represents a total projected production value abandoned between 1891 and 1898 of approximately $4,200,000 in 1890s dollars. That is the equivalent of roughly $140 million at current value. 7 companies absorbed $140 million in abandoned projected production, paid ongoing carrying costs on sealed and transferred land, and received $1 per parcel in the transfer consideration. A company does not walk away from $140 million in projected production without a reason that costs more than the production is worth. That sentence is the economic argument at the center of this case. It is not speculation. It is arithmetic. The numbers are in the Bureau of Mines surveys, in the transfer deeds, in the board minutes. The only variable the arithmetic requires to resolve is the one that is missing from every surviving document: what was found underground. Arthur Covington's field report for the Gunnison County No. 4 working answers that question for one of the 7 sites. It is in Box 12 of the Denver and Rio Grande Western Archive at the Colorado State Archives. It has been there since 1891. It describes a chamber 31 feet long and 12 feet wide at 240 feet below a productive Colorado mine. And it describes what was in the chamber, and 11 minutes after Harlon Fitch read it, he signed $62,000 worth of land over to an untraceable Philadelphia trust for $1. The report has not been published. It has not been referenced in any academic study of Colorado mining history. It is in a box in Denver, in a state archive that is open to the public, and it has been there for 135 years. The physical evidence that Covington's report describes, the chamber dimensions, the arrangement of the figures, the associated materials, places the Gunnison County find in the same category as the sealed chambers documented in West Virginia, Ohio, and Montana during the same decade. A constructed underground space predating any known civilization assigned to the region, containing physical remains inconsistent with any recognized burial tradition, at a depth and in a geological context that places its construction before the glacial retreat.
The General Revision Act of 1891, signed by President Benjamin Harrison on March 3, 1891, one day before Harlon Fitch signed the Gunnison County transfer deed, gave the federal government sweeping new authority to withdraw public lands from private entry and to revoke existing extraction rights on federal land. The act passed Congress in February 1891. The timing of its passage relative to the beginning of the Colorado mine closure sequence is not coincidental. The act created the legal architecture under which land above anomalous underground sites could be placed beyond the reach of private extraction, either by direct federal withdrawal or by transfer to private entities that would hold the land inert, at cost, in perpetuity, without development.
The Smithsonian Institution's Bureau of American Ethnology was reorganized and significantly expanded in 1879, the same year that the first documented sealed chamber finds began appearing in the Ohio and Kanawha drainages. The Bureau of Land Management's Land Withdrawal Authority, established in the 1890s through a series of executive orders building on the General Revision Act, tracks the same geographical concentration of anomalous finds that the Bureau of American Ethnology's field operations tracked in the same decade. The Geological Survey's Classified Survey Program, the surveys conducted under restricted access provisions that began in the early 1890s and whose results were not published in the survey's public report series, covers the same Colorado counties where the 7 mine closures occurred. These are not parallel institutions responding independently to unrelated mandates. They are components of the same architecture, built at the same time for the same purpose. The Tartarian hypothesis names that architecture directly. The civilization whose physical evidence was being removed from the Colorado mines between 1891 and 1898 was not a local anomaly. It was the same civilization whose sealed chambers were being found in West Virginia, whose copper operations had run through the Great Lakes for millennia, whose constructed stone-lined shafts were appearing in Montana ranch fields. The suppression infrastructure built around it, the General Revision Act, the Bureau expansion, the Classified Survey Program, the network of Delaware holding companies connected to a phantom Philadelphia law firm, was not improvised. It was coordinated. The coordination is visible in the timing. The 7 Colorado mine closures cluster in the 7 years immediately following the Act's passage. The Act was signed 1 day before the first transfer.
That is not a sequence that happens by chance. The land above the 7 former mine sites in Colorado is currently held by a mixture of federal and private entities. 3 of the 7 parcels are within the boundaries of national forests: the Gunnison National Forest, the San Isabel National Forest, and the Grand Mesa National Forest, designated or expanded in the period 1905 through 1920, which coincides with the second major wave of federal land withdrawal in the West. 4 are held by private LLCs. All 4 LLCs are Delaware incorporated. 3 share a registered agent in Wilmington, whose corporate services filings trace to the same federal contractor network identified in connection with the West Virginia and Virginia parcels in this investigation. The 4th, the entity holding the former Ute Creek mine surface rights in Hinsdale County, has a different registered agent, a different corporate services firm, but the same pattern. No commercial activity, no revenue, no employees, no development, and continuous annual carrying costs since the entity's incorporation in 1974. The 4 private LLC parcels collectively cover 1,012 acres of former Colorado mine land. None of them has been commercially active in the period of their current ownership. All of them sit above sealed shafts. A Freedom of Information request filed in September 2019 by Harold Vance, requesting all Geological Survey classified survey records for Gunnison, Lake, Pitkin, Mesa, Hinsdale, Fremont, and Ouray counties in Colorado for the period 1890 through 1910, produced a response citing Exemption 1 of the Freedom of Information Act, the National Security Exemption. Geological survey data from the 1890s in 7 Colorado counties is classified on national security grounds in 2019. The Geological Survey's response did not explain which specific national security concern applied to century-old mining survey data. It cited the exemption and closed the inquiry. Vance filed an appeal in January 2020. The appeal was denied in June 2020 with a 1-paragraph response reiterating the Exemption 1 designation. No further explanation was provided. The National Security Classification of 130-year-old geological survey records for Colorado counties is either a bureaucratic error or it is not.
If it is not an error, Then someone in the federal government decided within the past 30 years that what those surveys found in the 1890s is still sensitive enough to withhold from the public under the same statutory authority used to protect active intelligence operations. Harlon Fitch retired from the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad in 1897 and died in Denver in 1909. His personal papers, including correspondence from the period of the Colorado mine closures, are in the Denver Public Library's Western History Collection. They run to 4 boxes. There is no correspondence with Caldwell and Morrow of Philadelphia in any of them. There is no correspondence related to the Gunnison County transfer. There is a gap in the correspondence file for the period February through May 1891, the precise months bracketing the transfer deed, that is noted in the finding aid as missing, cause unknown. 4 boxes of a careful man's professional correspondence, and the 3 months surrounding the most anomalous transaction of his career are not in them. The outgoing folder on Fitch's desk on the morning of March 4, 1891, contained the transfer deed with his signature on it. It went to the recording office that afternoon.
The field report from Arthur Covington that preceded it by 11 minutes went into the Denver and Rio Grande Western's administrative files, where it has been in Box 12 for 135 years, unread by anyone who understood what it was describing. The deed is recorded. The report is filed. The 11 minutes between them is the gap where $140 million of projected production, 7 careers in mining, 7 sealed shafts, and the physical evidence of a civilization the official record will not name, all passed through a single transaction that took less time than it takes to read this sentence twice. The number 4 working in Gunnison County is under Forest Service land now. The sealed shaft is below a service road in the Gunnison National Forest. The chamber at 240 feet is still there. The same dimensions Covington wrote down, the same arrangement he described in 6 lines of functional prose. The same physical evidence that made Harlon Fitch sign $62,000 away for $1 in 11 minutes on a March morning in Denver 135 years ago. The report is in Box 12. The chamber is still at depth. What was found there, and found 6 more times across Colorado in the 7 years that followed, is described in the documents that exist and implied by the documents that do not.
The architecture built to keep it underground has been maintained without interruption since 1891, at a cost that the financial record makes visible to anyone willing to do the arithmetic. The arithmetic does not lie. The mines closed with ore in the ground. Someone decided that what was below the ore was worth more than the ore. That decision cost $140 million, and it is held for 135 years. And it is still holding today in 4 sealed shafts under National Forest Service roads and 4 LLC parcels in Delaware, names whose carrying costs continue to accrue year after year on land that will never be commercially developed. Because what is underneath it is not for sale and never has been. And the people who made that decision in 1891 made it for